Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dungeon Learner's Guide. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We've done one of these before, but I wanted to do another deck tech on one of my personal commander decks. People ask about these all the time. This is one that was kind of the inspiration for a former deck that I've done before. So a long time ago now, probably like 3+ years, I made a Fibblethip the Lost deck for the channel, and it did great. People seem to love it. But what people don't really know too much is that it's actually based off of my own personal Fibblethip deck. Now, there are definitely some changes that were made for the video to make it more budget friendly. My version is not, shall we say, budget friendly, but I'd still like to go through it because I think it's super cool and I'm a big fan of it. I love pulling Fibblethip out for some games. This is a Fblthp Voltron deck, which is kind of a wild statement to make. But at the same time, it's kind of a combo deck. So the Voltron is kind of there either as a backup or to convince our opponents that that is our main game plan. So then we can stick a combo and win that way. So very similar to the Fibblethip video that we did a while back. If that's something you're interested in seeing, I'll make sure that there's a link to it. Go check it out. It's a ton of fun seeing the budget version, but I want to give my own personal Fibblethip some love, and I do apologize for the glare. This is one of the promo foily cards, so it's not great with the light, but this is the deck we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through kind of piece by piece. I will say I've already separated out basic lands. I think I learned my lesson last time when talking about Kythian. We do have a ton of basic lands. This is a mono blue list, cares about islands, so a ton of islands in there. Obviously, don't need to go through all the islands. For the sake of the actual basics themselves, I tried to make most of them matching, as you can see, but they don't all match. I think there's like 2 or 3 different arts in here. So they're all roughly from core sets like M21, M20, M14, all that. So they're not as matching as some of my other decks, but they're also not as, unique as some of my other decks. So that is something that I didn't really put a lot of time and effort into when I was building this deck, but it's something that I did kind of go through. So let's go over the rest of it. So these are the non-basics, non-lands, well, I guess non-basics, including you know what I mean. So Mystic Sanctuary, of course, caring about islands, caring about spells, very easy to swap into some decks. Mask of Memory for our card draw shenanigans, our Voltron synergies. It is also worth mentioning, actually, that when I first put this deck together, I was like, oh, what would be cool? We throw some auras in here that can, make Fibblethip unblockable, that can draw cards. And then I played a couple of games with it before realizing that Fibblethip has the text, if he becomes the target of a spell, shuffle him into his owner's library. So not exactly what you want to be doing with your Voltron commander. So only equipments. We're not worried about shuffling him in if it is an equipment because it's an ability. We got Shadow Spear, get some lifelink, some trample. Colossus Hammer for, big bops, because obviously. Heraldic Banner, just some ramp and also, a little bit of extra power to Fibblethip. Pongify for some removal. Force of Negation, because we got to have those free counter spells to protect our commander. Sword of Sinew and Steel. Gotta, of course, get some of the swords. I will say I don't have as many of the swords in this list as I would like. It's definitely one of the, I don't want to say the weakest parts of the deck in terms of theme, but it's definitely a very expensive addition. So we only have a couple of the swords in here. We have Mind's Desire, just an expensive spell that people need to deal with, kind of takes some of the threat away from Fibblethip, and it's a nice value piece. Skeleton Key, once again, getting a little bit of, maybe not card draw, but card advantage out of our commander. Getting a Hero's Blade, so that way we can still do some more damage. Auto equips for legends. Some more free counter spells. Fierce Guardianship. As long as we got Fibblethip, it's free, so save our commander. Helm of the Host, because, Fibblethip has an ETB draw card, so multiple Fibbletips means multiple draw cards. Always very good. Reliquary Tower, we intend to draw many cards and don't want to be discarding them. Pull from Tomorrow, card draw. Trailblazer's Boots, this is pretty much unblockable. I don't know how many people have actually played Trailblazer's Boots in Commander, but since it gives your creature non-basic landwalk, it is like 99% of the time going to make a creature unblockable. Very good. If you haven't tried it, definitely try it. Worn Power Stone for some ramp. Polymorphous Jests, so some temporary removal. It turns everything into 1/1s, which can be very good if someone's going for, a winning turn or needs some special ability. Another sword, Truth and Justice this time. Probably one of the better ones for Fibblethip, because it can give him that +1/+1 and proliferate. Notably, it does give protection from blue. That is sometimes relevant. We don't really have blue equipments, but it is a noticeable thing to be aware of. Aether Spellbomb, card draw removal, Myriad Landscape. I love this card. I know a lot of people don't, but love it. Soul Ring, some ramp, negate for counter spells, Sentinel Totem, because I try to be a responsible Magic player and run graveyard removal, even if it is not super efficient. You may notice that because we have a lot of equipments, we are also a little bit artifact focused, so this being an artifact helps us do that. Blackblade Reforged, one of the best equipment in the entire deck, probably the best for any real Voltron deck. This is a great way to turn Fibblethip into a massive threat very, very quickly. Arcane Signet for some ramp. Imprisoned in the Moon, personally, I think this is a very underrated removal spell in Commander. Turning someone's commander into a land can be very powerful. It gets rid of them permanently. You don't have to deal with them being recast. And yeah, they get 1 extra mana, but let's be honest, it's Commander. People have an absurd amount of mana, so it doesn't really matter in the long run. Folio of Fancies is in here as another card draw spell. We probably aren't going to use the mill spell so much. I have also noticed people are very afraid of this card, even though they don't really need to be. It's one of those cards that people are more afraid of the mill than I think they need to be. But I understand why people don't like having their cards milled. Field of Ruin, sometimes there's just things that gotta go away. Shark Typhoon, because we are casting a lot of non-creatures. This is not instants and sorceries, so it triggers on our equipments as well, and our ramp spells and our counter spells and things like that. So it's a great way to make an army to protect Fibblethip. We got Tunnel Vision, and for those who watched our original Fibblethip video on the channel, probably familiar with why Tunnel Vision's in the deck, but I'm going to actually set that one to the side for a second because we're going to come back to that later. It is a secret tool that will help us later. Dousing Dagger, phenomenal, just turns into a land that produces 3 mana if it hits. Whisper Silk Cloak, again, one of the few ways we can give true unblockable to Fibblethip. Unfortunately, also does give Shroud, so that is something to be aware of. Dramatic Reversal, oh, look at that, we already got a lot of the pieces we need here. So Proteus Staff, Dramatic Reversal, also part of our combo appeal, so we're going to set both of those aside as well. Dramatic Reversal untaps every non-land permanent we control, but the real highlight here is Proteus Staff, because Proteus Staff specifically puts target creature on the bottom of its owner's library, and then they reveal cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card, put that card into play, put the rest on the bottom in any order. That is incredibly important because you may have noticed we have not talked about a single other creature in this entire deck. Fibblethip is the only creature in this entire deck. That means that when we activate Proteus Staff targeting Fibblethip, put him on the bottom of our deck, we can then immediately reveal him, because he is the next creature we would hit, put him into play, draw 2 cards, because Fibblethip's amazing. And then the specification of putting those cards that were revealed on the bottom in any order means we can actually stack our deck to be exactly what we want it to be. We can put every single card in any order we want. And this is just a tip for those of you who may want to try this out. Don't stack every single card. Your friends will hate you for that because you're just sitting there going through all 100 cards. Just hand pick the ones that you need for any given situation. In this case, something like, say, Tunnel Vision, which lets you name a card and then people reveal until they hit that card. And then they mill over all those cards that were named. Not named, that were revealed and not named. So that means that we are able to stack our deck in any order with Proteus Staff, and then cast Tunnel Vision, because if we didn't have it in hand, it can be quite literally the next card we draw. We now know what card we put on the bottom. Because of Proteus Staff, we can exile our entire library except for the bottom card. That is kind of what this is in here to do, and part of why this deck was put together specifically with Fibblethip. Because it's also worth noting that if you're able to pull this off, then you're left with 1 card in your deck. And We haven't quite gotten to why we just want one card in our deck, but I'm sure we will. So hold on to that for me and we'll get there. Continuing on, though, we have Mantle of Tides, one of the few blue equipments in the deck, and it's very nice because when you draw your second card each turn, it just auto-equips to a creature. So we obviously draw for our turn, play Fibblethip, it'll come in, auto-equip because we've cast Fibblethip to draw a card. Very nice. Armillary Sphere is here for some ramp. Not great ramp. Actually, I don't even think it's technically ramp. It just puts basics into our hand. So, it's alright. Probably should swap it for something else. Commander's Plate, one of the best equipments in the entire deck. Being able to give Fibblethip protection from everything that's not blue is incredibly powerful because a lot of removal spells don't tend to be blue. There's, Pongify, Rapid Hybridization, Reality Shift, things like that. But most of the time, that's not the primary blue way of removal. It typically is counterspells, so once that hits the board, Fibblethip's usually free to do his thing. We have Teferi's Tutelage, another win condition for the deck because we do tend to draw a ton of cards, so we can mill our opponents out with this. Whir of Invention, which is a tutor for artifacts. We got the fancy D&D version. Trying to not have it glare off of my webcam there. But very good thing to search up an artifact. We got plenty of artifacts, including our Proteus staff over here. We have Opt, just cheap, efficient card draw. Traveler's Amulet for, again, technically ramp, even though it goes to our hand, so not ramp. Part the Water Veil, just in case. Gotta have at least one extra turn spell, because typically, if we go Proteus Staff into Tunnel Vision, remove our entire deck, we typically just die. And in fact, a lot of times, if we just cast Proteus Staff, people kill us right then and there. So having an extra turn every once in a while is a great way to set up the combo and then immediately proceed with the combo to win. We got Bone Splitter, just some extra cheap damage for equipments. Rogue's Gloves, some more card draw. Seagate Restoration, one of the better MDFCs, also very expensive, so I don't typically get to play it on the channel. It's a great way to draw a ton of cards, and it's also a land on the other side. Jousting Staff, just some more damage. Discontinuity is mainly in here as a counterspell, but it's also one of those cards that I think is kind of underrated in Commander. Forcing someone to skip their turn is incredibly powerful, and it also acts as a 2-mana counterspell on your turn because it forces your opponents to, if they cast something, you can just end the turn, get it off the stack, save whatever they were targeting. So it's definitely one of those cards that's very universal, and I am a big fan of it. Again, I don't play it very often because it is pretty expensive. Cobbled Wings, got to give Fibblethip some flying, get him above the blockers. Chitinous Cloak, again, for some evasion. It's got Menace. Sword of the Animist, one of the best ramp spells we could have when we're talking about artifacts and equipments. Trepanation Blade is one of the cards that did happen to make it in both this deck and the Fibblethip deck that's on the channel. And if you haven't seen the game that came along with that deck, this card did some work in that game. I would highly recommend you go back and check it out, because even though that game was years ago at this point, I still very much remember Trepanation Blade milling, putting in some work there. Next up, we got Swiftfoot Boots, obviously protecting Fibblethip, giving him haste. Mindstone for some ramp. Bone Horde as just a way to deal some more damage. Fire Shrieker for double strike. Mirror Shield, so that way we can, again, protect, give hexproof. Brawler's Plate gives trample, so some more evasion if needed. Haunted Cloak also gives trample and vigilance and haste, so some more evasion. Archmage's Charm, counterspell mostly. We can also draw cards and, I guess, gain control of something that costs 1 or less. So if someone has a Soul Ring and we want it, we can just snatch it. We have Mystical Tutor, so we can search up any of our spells that we need, like Tunnel Vision, like Dramatic Reversal, and we may need Dramatic Reversal for Isochron Scepter, which I'm sure everyone is aware of, but in case you are not, Isochron Scepter allows you to put any instant underneath it that costs 2 or less. So if we put Dramatic Reversal underneath it, we can then pay 2 mana to untap all of our non-land permanents, which will include the Scepter, allowing us, if we have multiple mana rocks, to essentially make infinite mana. And then at that point, we can probably cast Fibblethip, we can activate Proteus Staff. There's a lot of card draw that requires mana, so if we can make infinite mana, we essentially just win the game. We can pretty much draw to whatever we need to draw to. And one of the best ways we can do that, Blue Sun Zenith, just X draw. And also a great way if we make infinite mana to actually win the game, because we can draw our entire deck, go down to one card in our deck, which is going to be the Blue Suns. We shuffle it back in. Then we can draw it. We can cast it on our opponents, make them draw their entire deck, shuffle it back in, draw it, make someone else. And so it's another great backup win condition if we don't wind up with one of the combos, if we don't wind up with, well, I guess it technically would involve one of the combos, but it doesn't involve Proteus Staff. It doesn't involve the Voltron strategy. Then we got Reality Shift, more removal. Feldon's Cane, kind of an underrated graveyard spell, in my opinion. It just, reshuffles our graveyard into our library. So if our opponents try to exile it, if they do something to get rid of our graveyard, we can get the stuff back that we need. And then last but not least, the official main win condition of the deck. I would like to state for the record, I didn't fully stack this. I pulled all the islands out. I did not leave Jace at the bottom. That was just a happy accident. But Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, is the main reason we are playing Tunnel Vision and Proteus Staff. Because if we would draw a card with no cards left in our library, we win the game. So we can activate Proteus Staff, stack our deck, know what's on the bottom with Tunnel Vision, probably Jace if we have not already drawn Jace. Get rid of the rest of our deck, draw Jace, play Jace, activate, win. So that is the main goal of this deck, but as you saw looking through all of the equipments, that's not a bad backup strategy. Being able to just suit Fblthp up can, in most cases, close out games as well, especially once he's, tough to target, unblockable, things like that. So some major differences from the deck that was posted on the channel, but I did want to highlight my own personal Fblthp. Like I said, people have been asking about it for a while. So my hope is to continue to do little deck techs like this in the future. If there's anything you think I can do to improve the format, because I am still trying to figure out lighting and things like that, please do let me know, because I would love to get feedback on if this worked, how it worked, and if there's anything that you guys would like to see in the future. I do have a Moxfield account that has all of my personal decks listed. So if you are interested, I'll make sure to link that in the video description. You can go in there. You are welcome at any point to request any of those decks, and I am more than happy to show them off, talk about why cards are in there, talk about the strategies, maybe what's going on with it. But that is where we're at right now with the deck techs of personal decks. So, like I said, if you have any suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, please don't forget to like the video if you would like to see more. Subscribe to the channel if you can. We are trying to make that push to 2,000. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all on the other side of the Dungeon Learner's Guide.